Heart of the Wolf, a paranormal romance novel by author A. Mariposa. Now available in print and ebook on Amazon. Chapter 3. Maddy cracked open her eyes with a groan. Her first thought was, I didn't finish my homework last night. She had a test today. She groaned. Why was her head so sore? She turned into the pillow and took a deep breath, rubbing her nose against the fabric. It smelled good, but different. She breathed again, enjoying the spicy odor of cologne. Aftershave? Tea tree shampoo? Then her heart slammed against her chest. Not her pillow. Not her bed. The night before came back to her with a jarring burst of pain. Her head pulsed with her heartbeat. Her hand flew up to feel the thick wad of sterile bandages and medical tape covering her forehead. The left side of her head was so tender, even her hand hovering over it made it ache. What happened? Was she in the hospital? She cracked open her eyes again, cringing at the mid-morning light. She was on a king-sized bed covered by a gray comforter. To her left was a window with wooden blinds. The floor was covered in gray vinyl wood panels. The walls were bare of any artwork or decor. The closet's sliding door was open, revealing a second-hand dresser and a laundry basket full of someone's clothes. A man's clothes. A violent reaction overcame her body. She remembered the man who had ripped open her shirt last night. She convulsed and almost threw up. I was raped? She reached up to grab her breasts through a loose cotton shirt. No, she wasn't raped. She was, almost, raped. So then, I was saved. By a wolf? What kind of stupid luck was that? Some paranormal podcast shit. Okay. If she wasn't dead, and she wasn't in the woods, then where the hell? She sat up, slow and silent. Her whole body ached. She was covered in bruises. She didn't remember most of them. Careful not to move her head too much, she slid to the edge of the bed. Standing up was more difficult than she anticipated. The room kept swaying left and right. She placed her feet on the wood vinyl flooring. She twitched her toes. Nothing seemed broken. She carefully stood up. She looked around again. The room was smaller from this angle. Then she looked down at herself, staring mutely. It took a moment to register that she was naked, except for her panties and a very unfamiliar t-shirt, the color of dried mustard, that fell to her knees. Oh no. Where are my clothes? Her breath caught. Her knees wobbled, threatening to give out. The gun. The men. I'm okay, she thought, putting a hand against the wall. I'm alive. She couldn't go explore the house in the state, but staying put was out of the question. Did the bastards from last night kidnap her? Then why wasn't she tied up in a closet? She tried the bedroom door. It wasn't locked. She opened it slowly. The hallway was just as ugly as the bedroom. She saw shaggy brown carpet and in need of paint walls. It was still a good sight better than her trailer. She walked down the hall slowly. The old flooring creaked beneath her feet. She passed by a bathroom on her left, then a second bedroom on her right, with a smaller bed and a bare mattress, no sheets or quilts. It looked in disuse. Then she heard the suspicious sound of clinking plates and running water. The voice of a news announcer spoke from the TV. She crept toward the sound. The hallway opened up into a large living room. To her left, a deep couch faced a set of massive speakers. The new tech clashed with the 70s-style carpet and red brick. Above the fireplace, a 60-inch TV was mounted on the wall. It showed the local news station, WWNY. Remembering the commotion from last night, she wondered if anyone had reported her missing. Probably not, she thought self-deprecatingly. The unmistakable smell of bacon reached her nose. Instantly, Maddy's mouth watered. Her stomach let out a low rumble. The sink turned off. Someone was in the kitchen. She hesitated at the edge of the living room. She felt frozen in indecision. Did she approach the unseen person, or did she retreat? What if, around the corner, she ran straight into one of the scumbags from last night? She couldn't fathom who else might be in the house. If she was smart, she would sneak out before they realized she was awake. She didn't recognize the interior of the house at all. She didn't even know if she was still in Black River. She glanced down at the mustard yellow t-shirt. Whoever it belonged to, they were way bigger than her. I should go back, she thought, turning around. Maybe she could climb out the bedroom window and get the hell gone.
Hey.
She stiffened. Her heart gave a little flutter. She knew that voice. His husky baritone was unmistakable. Maddy looked back over her shoulder. It was him. Oh, good Lord. He stood at the entrance to the kitchen, a towel over one shoulder. Their eyes met. She felt a little zap of lightning. Maddy turned around slowly to face him. She was shocked. He was her secret, and secrets were supposed to remain hidden. Not standing before her, face to face. This was her first time standing so close to him outside of work, in broad daylight, without a dark moonlit forest obscuring his physique. His honey hazel eyes glimmered beneath stern brows. His black hair, a warm tone like rich earthen humus, fell freely past his shoulders. His massive chest made two little mountains under his white t-shirt. He was very tall and packed with muscle. She guessed him to be 3 or 4 inches over 6 feet. A full sleeve of tattoos covered each arm. She had never really looked at them before. Up near his left shoulder, partly hidden by his shirt, she saw a vibrant, grinning skull in the sinister style of Dios de los Muertos. The word Lobo in rustic Southwest font ran down his right forearm, while Loco ran down the left. If his arms were both down, it read Lobo Loco. His right arm also carried the astrological symbol of a Scorpio, or maybe it was just a big fucking scorpion. The rest of the sleeve was too intricate for her to really appreciate at a glance. His skin was deep tan. He wore blue jeans and steel-toed work boots. Something like car grease stained his shirt. She wondered, not for the first time, if he worked at a garage. Maddy realized she was staring with her mouth slightly open. She shut it. She met his eyes again. She really didn't know what to say.
You hungry?
Then he walked back into the kitchen. Maddy followed him with some hesitation. She felt like a stray cat who had wandered into someone's house. He set a plate of bacon down on the kitchen table, and she pulled out a chair and sat down. Next to the bacon was a plate of scrambled eggs and 2 big waffles with maple syrup.
I didn't know what you liked. Eat what you want, I'll finish the rest.
Like he needed to explain why he'd served her an entire breakfast buffet. Thank you, she mumbled. She picked up her fork and speared one of the waffles onto her plate. The sight of so much food made her suddenly ravenous. She felt like she had burned 10,000 calories the night before. She started shoving warm, syrup-covered waffles straight into her mouth. He continued washing the dishes. The voice on the TV droned on. Maddy's ears suddenly perked when she heard her name.
Now on local news, 5 bodies were found in the woods just outside Black River. Police are saying animal attack. Nearby mobile home abandoned. Currently searching for Maddy Donovan, a student at Black River High School. If you have any information about her whereabouts, please call.
So the police were looking for her. Wow. Color her impressed. Someone must have reported her missing. Maybe a neighbor heard the gunshots. Certainly not her father. Sounded like Dean still hadn't come home. Another voice interrupted Maddy's thoughts, a memory from the night before.
Rough up the guy. Toss his place. Leave a message.
Maddy's hands started to shake. Her fork slipped through her clumsy fingers. It clattered to her plate. Then to the floor. It made a lot of noise. Her host turned to look at her. Sorry, she muttered. Her hands clutched the bottom of her shirt as she tried to stop trembling. He was still watching her. That made it worse. This isn't normal. Nothing about this is normal, she thought. She was in his house. Her head was bandaged, and she was sitting in his boxers and a t-shirt. She felt a weird sense of vertigo. Everything was surreal. She stared at her plate. Her cheeks were burning. She tried not to think of the unnegotiable fact that she was wearing his clothes, which meant someone must have undressed her the night before, which meant he absolutely saw her naked.
You okay?
Yeah. He shut off the sink. Then he passed through the kitchen and into the living room where he picked up the remote. He turned off the TV.
Sorry if that bothered you.
It's all right, she said. She turned in the chair. She could see him clearly. He was only about 10 feet away. She studied his face again. The light from the window cast shadows beneath his high cheekbones. He looked devilish. He had a masculine neck, a cleft chin, a straight nose, and a slightly prominent brow that gave his face a stern appearance. His lips were firm and sensual. His lashes were long and dark. His eyes were a bright, unusual hazel color. Sometimes they were green, and sometimes they were gold. She couldn't tell if he was Native American, Mexican, Brazilian, or a little bit of everything. To her, he looked like an exotic model from somewhere warm and tropical. She felt a sweet flutter in her stomach. It was not a shy tickle, but a steroid-enhanced butterfly striking her ribcage. She liked him so much. But he was an adult, and she was only 19. So, probably too young for him. God, she could not stop blushing.
So what happened last night?
His deep baritone sent shivers down her spine. She had to force herself to think. It was their first conversation beyond a few words at the hardware store. Shit. She was so nervous. It took a moment for her to organize her thoughts. Some people broke into my house, she said. It felt weird to hear herself talk. Her brain seemed to lag behind her mouth. I think my dad owed them money. They said something about toss the place and rough him up. But my dad wasn't home. So, pretty sure they meant to make me their message. He crossed his big arms across his chest and glanced over her.
Got it. They didn't hurt you, did they?
Maddy winced. You mean, besides this? She pointed to the wad of sterile bandages taped to the side of her head. No, they didn't rape me, if that's what you mean. I got away. Some animal distracted them like the news said. I guess it was a wolf. I can't really remember. She frowned. Did you find me in the woods?
Yeah.
Maddy processed that for a moment. So he was out on the mountain last night, which made her very lucky. They had never spoken about their little ritual in the woods before. How she kept running away at night, and how he kept finding her up in those mountains, guiding her back home when she got lost in the woods. The first time, she was 14. What about my clothes? She asked, her hands beginning to shake again.
They were torn up pretty bad.
Oh. But, where are they?
I tossed the shirt. Your pants are drying.
Shit, Maddy muttered. Now her cheeks were heating for a different reason. You threw away my shirt? So you saw. Maddy paused. She was pretty sure her shirt had been ripped in half. So, if he found her like that on the mountainside, that meant he got a big eyeful of her breasts. Her head spun for a moment. No guy had ever seen her tits. She was mortified. He must have picked her up and carried her back to his car, then driven here, to his house. Which meant she was unconscious the whole time. He could have done anything to her. Her heart jolted in a bad way. It was a terrifying, nauseating thought, especially considering the way those thugs had treated her like raw meat. She met his eyes. He must have seen the fear in her expression, because he uncrossed his big tattooed arms and took a few steps toward her. He paused when he saw her flinch.
Hey, I know you don't really know me, but I'd never hurt you. You're safe here.
She glanced away. Fuck. She knew she was safe. She knew that. But...
Your head okay?
Yeah, it's fine. So how did you find me?
I heard the gunshots. I followed them to you. You were easy to find, not far from your place.
She reached a hand up to touch her bandages. Did you do this? He nodded. She bit her lip. I guess you saved my life. I got lucky. Most people would have run away.
Fuck that. I'm not scared of a few punks.
And a wolf?
Yeah, well, I didn't see one, so.
A burst of laughter escaped her lips. Yeah, right. A wolf saved me from getting raped. This is so crazy, she repeated, barely able to believe all the events of the night before, and now she was on the news. 5 bodies were found dead outside of her trailer. She could barely wrap her head around it. I really shouldn't stay here, she mumbled as she stood up from the kitchen table. I should probably call my dad or something, make sure he's okay. She started across the kitchen, but the floor unexpectedly dipped to one side. She lost her balance and tried to catch herself on the countertop. Shit, she stood up too fast. He leaned forward and caught her by the arm. She stumbled into him, grabbing his other arm for balance. He steadied her, their forearms locked together, his hands gripping her by the elbows. She stared at him in shock, his face suddenly very close. She could feel the warmth of his skin beneath her hands and the roughness of his tattoos. His brows were lowered in concern, but she didn't miss the slightly bemused smile that played across his mouth.
You dizzy?
Not really, I'm fine now.
Just slow?
Yeah. I think I just stood up too fast.
Right, okay. So, you might have a concussion. I should probably take you to the hospital.
No! The outburst surprised her. No, really. I don't have insurance. And I'm just waking up. I just need to pull it together.
I think we should probably go. They knocked you pretty good.
Please? I can't afford it. Really. I promise I feel fine. I'm just adjusting.
Guess it's a bit of a shock waking up here.
Yeah. She dropped her eyes again. The smell of him was distracting. It was all over his t-shirt. I think I should get dressed, she mumbled.
Your pants are drying. Not much I could do for the shirt, but you can borrow that one. It's a bit big on you.
A hint of humor crept into his eyes. She smiled shyly. Wow, awkward. He motioned for her to follow him and walked from the kitchen into the hallway. He opened a third door and stepped into a narrow laundry room where the dryer was running. He selected a pair of gray sweatpants and a hoodie from a clean pile of folded laundry. He handed them to her.
Bathroom's on the left.
She clutched the sweatpants to her chest and slipped past him into the hallway, trying not to touch him. Then she headed for the bathroom she saw earlier. His eyes followed her. She felt his gaze like a pressure on her back. She closed the bathroom door and set her back against it with a sigh of relief. Geez, she thought, trying to calm the insane butterflies in her ribs. Why did he look like he wanted to eat her? Thank you for listening to Heart of the Wolf podcast. This podcast was written and produced personally by author A. Mariposa for your listening enjoyment. Please support the author's work by sharing and recommending this podcast to your friends or purchasing a copy of the print book or ebook from Amazon.com. Subscribe and stay tuned for the next chapter. Heart of the Wolf, a paranormal romance novel by author Mariposa. Now available in print and ebook format on Amazon.com. Chapter 4. Maddy sat her bare ass on the toilet. She didn't have her cell phone. She left it in the trailer. Fuck. The thought of returning to the trailer filled her with dread. Her whole body tensed. The bathroom was tiled in 90s linoleum, little off-white squares in a white and green checkered pattern. The cabinets were basic and wooden. The shower was clean, but she saw a little mold on the curtain. Still way better than her bathroom at home, where half the time, vomit or piss caked the back of the toilet. She couldn't poop, her body was all uptight. So she gave up and started going through his bathroom cabinet. You can learn a lot about people by what they keep in their bathroom, she thought. Is he safe? Or a creep? Deodorant, tissue boxes, Band-Aids, a million hair ties, razors, toothpaste, mouthwash. There had to be something suspicious. He couldn't just be a normal guy. She had never seen a bathroom cabinet before without pill bottles of some kind. There, some NyQuil. It was half full. Did he drink it? She pulled open a drawer and found a box of Magnum XL condoms. She slammed the drawer shut with a freaked out little gasp. Calm the fuck down. You're acting crazy, she thought. She rummaged through the remaining cabinets and then under the sink. All she found were normal, everyday, boring things. How could he be a regular guy working at a car garage and living in a 2-bedroom house built in 1973? Could she trust him? Was he safe? He was her obsession, her daydream, her only comfort on those dark nights when she ran blindly through the forest. So, who the hell was he? He hadn't even introduced himself, yet she was wearing his clothes? Somehow, that seemed naughty. But Maddy was having a hard time finding any dirt on him.
You okay in there? I don't hear the shower.
I'm fine, she called through the door. He probably thought she had passed out on the toilet. Maddy turned on the hot water. She stood under the shower for 30 seconds, careful not to get her bandage wet. Axe body wash, she noted. Then she toweled off. She put on his sweatpants, pulling the drawstring extra tight. When she pulled on the bulky sweater, his scent enveloped her again, and she felt like she had donned a coat of armor. Maybe he intended that? She stood for a guilty moment, smelling the intensely masculine scent of his hoodie. Fuck, she thought. So this is what he smelled like. It almost made her dizzy. She wanted to lick it. Keep it together, Maddy. She lifted a hand to the bandage that covered her right temple. She felt a bit of warm fuzziness. No one had ever bandaged her up before. Then she took a breath and forced herself back into the hallway. Her anxiety tightened in her stomach. She found him in the living room, slouched in front of the TV, the screen on but the sound muted, again, watching the news. She wondered if he was waiting for something. She hovered at the entrance to the living room, still uncertain.
I'll take you to school. Your picture is all over the local news. You should let them know you're okay.
Maddy blanched. She would rather pass herself off as dead. What should I tell the school? She asked.
Tell them the truth. Some bad guys broke into your house.
Right. And I went straight to school the next day?
You're a dedicated student.
Yeah, right. He gave her a sharp look. She almost felt ashamed. What, was he mad at her for hating school? She asked him, how do I explain where I was all night? Should I say I spent the night at a friend's house?
Sure, if you want. Am I your friend?
Yeah, but I can leave you out of it, if you don't want to be involved.
It's fine. Let's go. You're already late.
He stood up and turned off the TV. He's taking me to school, she thought. A storm of butterflies kicked up again. She knew this was a serious situation, but how many times had she imagined him driving her around? On particularly bad days, she would fantasize about him picking her up from school, or walking her home, or doing any of the romantic things that boyfriends did. Not that he was anything like her boyfriend. Or could be. How old was he again? Then he stood up and beckoned her into the kitchen. She followed him like a lost dog.
Stand under the light.
He directed her to the lamp over the stove. She did so, a little confused. They stood in the kitchen only a few inches apart. She tried not to stare at the planes of his face or the width of his shoulders. How can he not feel this? The magnetism between them was palpable. She felt jittery, like she had 5 cups of coffee. She couldn't think straight. He reached for her head. She wasn't prepared, so she flinched back. Her reaction must have been extreme, because he paused. Sorry, she mumbled. He watched her closely. When next he spoke, his voice was calm and level.
Don't be sorry. I need to check your bandages. Do I have your permission to touch you?
Yeah. Sorry.
You're fine, baby girl. You don't have to keep apologizing.
Baby girl. It slid off his tongue so smoothly. She felt warm. When he reached for her again, she didn't pull away. His large hands were shockingly gentle as he touched her head. She barely felt the tug of medical tape as he lifted the bandage away from her wound. Is it bad? She dared to ask. She didn't like blood. It made her queasy. He hissed between his teeth.
That's a big-ass bruise, but it's not bleeding anymore. The laceration is shallow. Does it hurt?
Yeah, but it's not bad.
Huh.
He grunted deep in his throat. She didn't think he was aware of the sound. Who are you? She asked abruptly. It was stupid, but since they were standing so close together, it seemed the time to ask. I mean, what's your name?
Gareth Delarosa.
He said it with a sexy sort of accent. He looked so damn hot, she almost forgot to respond. Right. Sorry. I'm Maddy, by the way.
I know.
What? How do you know that? Are you stalking me? He grinned at her, like she had said something cute.
Your name is all over the news, remember?
Oh. Right.
The bandage should be fine for now, but I'm going to change it for you after school.
Okay. After school. Did that mean she was coming back here? She swallowed past a hard lump in her throat. Where else did she have to go? She couldn't go back to the mobile. He turned away, nonchalant, and picked up his keys from the counter.
We should go. It's already past 10.
Maddy followed him, a bit embarrassed. Maybe she had misread the situation. Maybe he wasn't that into her. And maybe she was acting like she had a crush on him. Like a freshman flirting with a senior. But worse. So much worse. Be more adulty, she told herself. But she didn't know how. His car was sitting in the driveway. He owned a classic '69 Camaro in need of serious rehabilitation. The paint was partially stripped down to the metal, the leather seats were cracking, and it was missing a window. He opened the car door for her. A small gesture, but she noticed. She slid across the cracked leather as he climbed into the driver's side. He slammed the door twice before it clicked shut, then he revved up the engine. The old muscle car choked to life with a roar that felt like an earthquake. She saw him grimace, half smile, half baring of teeth. He likes the sound, she thought. Then Gareth put on his sunglasses and pulled out onto the street. She watched him from the corner of her eye. He slouched back in the driver's seat and steered with one hand, completely relaxed. With his sunglasses on, she couldn't see his eyes. She glanced at his full sleeves of tattoos. He looked cool and mysterious.
Do you know how to drive?
Not yet. Maddy felt very young. No license. He definitely thinks I'm a kid. She tried to explain. I got my permit. Like, I'm not lazy or scared of it or anything. Just, my dad doesn't own a car, so I can't practice.
Got it. You want to learn?
Yeah.
I'll teach you.
I'd like that.
Yeah, me too.
A brief silence fell between them. Maddy was surprised. Her mind started looking ahead. Driving lessons? With him? She didn't know whether to squirm in excitement or die of embarrassment. It seemed he wanted to see her again. This is really happening, she thought. So after school, you said. Like, after school, are we?
I'll pick you up.
Right, I need to go home for a bit to get some things. He didn't answer her immediately. She didn't want to go back to that trailer alone. The violence of last night remained with her. 5 men had chased her into the woods, tried to rape her, and then got attacked by a wild animal. The memories made her sick and numb at the same time. She gripped her hands when they started to shake again. She didn't think she would ever feel safe in that trailer, but if she was going to stay with him, she needed to get her stuff, at least her backpack for school and her cell phone. She waited for him to jump in and offered to take her back to her trailer, but he didn't say anything. Maddy crossed her arms. She couldn't get a read on him. Never mind, she said. I'll figure it out. Anyways. Do you work at a garage around here? I always wondered, but didn't get a chance to ask you. Like, I think there's a garage downtown. I just mean, 'cause the stains on your shirt look like oil, I thought cars might be your thing. And the Camaro. It's cool. Are you working on it? They stopped at a red light. He leaned across the car. Maddy went stiff with shock. He pressed his mouth to hers. His hand cupped her face. Maddy's heart pounded. She felt his warm lips against her own. A brush of stubble. Then his tongue slid into her mouth. Oh wow. Fuck. It could have been quick, but he lingered. His tongue caressed hers, over and over. Hot and wet and bold. Maddy had never been kissed before. She didn't know what to do. His breath smelled like fresh mint and burnt coffee. A pleasant tingle shot down to her toes. Her cheeks heated. She felt shy. Then he released her. He restarted the engine because the car had stalled and drove through the green light. Maddy sat back, her lips stinging. She didn't know what to think. Why did you do that? She asked, curling her knees up to her chest in her seat.
You seemed insecure.
His answer embarrassed her because he was right. Yeah, well, I'm not insecure, she lied. My life's a mess. If you were smart, you'd stay far away.
I don't want to stay far away.
Maddy glanced at him. She couldn't read his expression with his sunglasses on. So what? You want to be my friend or something?
Or something.
Like what? Like my boyfriend?
Huh. Do you have one?
No.
Then yeah, I'm your boyfriend.
Maddy didn't know what he meant. Was he serious? He made it sound like she didn't have a choice. Which was absurd. Of course she did. Didn't she?
I'll take you to your place after school. We'll get your things. Then you're staying with me for a while.
Silence descended on the Camaro, which wasn't very silent at all, but more like sitting inside a thundercloud. Maddy stared resolutely out the window, playing with a lock of auburn hair, pulling and tugging at her uneven bangs. Boyfriend? He couldn't be serious. But then, why did he kiss her? What is happening right now? She tried to remain calm as the gray buildings of her high school came into view. Her stomach churned. Just another day at school. Just another day, even if the whole town thought she was dead. He pulled up alongside the curb. Then his car sat there, idling. The metal gates to the quad were locked at all times, except for before and after school hours. She would have to pass through the admissions office to get to class. The moment she stepped through those glass doors, she would be under a spotlight. Her clothes were obviously meant for someone twice her size. She had a bandage on her head. She didn't have her backpack or any form of identification. She realized her hands were shaking again. She clenched them tight. Damn it, why am I so freaked out? Without warning, Gareth reached over and pulled up her hood. He tugged it carefully over the bandage.
Better?
She nodded. Having her hood up made her feel safer.
If they tell you to take it off, just say you're cold.
She nodded again.
Hey, you alright?
He took his sunglasses off so she could see his hazel eyes. His gaze was steady. Strong. I'm okay.
Pick you up at 3.
Okay? He held up a yellow sticky note. It was folded in half.
This is my name and my cell phone. Give it to the police if they need it. You stayed at my place last night.
Yeah, I'll just tell them the truth.
Exactly. You've done nothing wrong, Maddy.
She looked down. She had the sudden, terrible urge to cry. Then why does it feel like this is all my fault? She asked.
It's not.
Maddy drew a firm breath. She forced her hands to unbuckle her seatbelt. Forced herself to open the car door. She gave him a little wave and stepped out of the car, closing the door behind her. Then she walked up to the glass doors of the administration office. The admin building was a bustle of activity. The morning was in full swing. The doors opened into a white linoleum lobby with leather waiting chairs. Behind a tall wooden counter, 5 women shuffled back and forth, some carrying manila folders, others filling their cups with coffee. One woman sat at the counter behind a computer. Her name tag read Julia Miller.
If you're late, put your name on the list.
The secretary indicated a clipboard. Then she glanced up at Maddy. She looked again.
Madeline?
The rest of the women turned to stare at her. One had a donut in her mouth. Maddy wanted to dash out of the building and run across the quad. But she headed for the front counter and wrote her name down. Hi, she said. Julia came around the counter to stand in front of Maddy. She had short brown hair, styled in a practical bob, and she wore a red turtleneck sweater.
Are you okay?
I'm here, aren't I?
Your name is all over the news. The police are talking to the principal right now. They will want to see you. We are all so relieved you're okay.
Thank you, Maddy said. Her head was reeling. She didn't expect to see the police immediately. She thought it would take some time for a squad car to drive out. She swallowed nervously. I have to get to class. Julia looked at her with sympathy.
This is a bit more important, my dear.
Of course. Yeah. I can wait.
Take a seat and I'll be right back.
Maddy sat down in one of the waiting chairs. She tried to ignore the stares from the rest of the women behind the counter. One of them brought her a cup of coffee, which she clutched in her hands, trying not to be nervous. She was shaking again. She didn't have to wait long. Julia came back after a few minutes.
Come with me.
Julia led her around the wide counter and through a door, then down a hallway with white laminate tile. Then they entered a break room with the same off-white tile floor and yellow walls. She saw a fridge, a microwave, and a yellow countertop. 2 police officers stood by the counter. The school's principal, a plump and balding man in a gray suit, spoke with them. They each held a cup of coffee in hand. Julia led her to them.
Here we are. Maddy Donovan, safe and sound.
Madeline, we've been very worried about you. We are so relieved that you are safe and unharmed.
Principal Rodriguez greeted her when he saw her. He was a short man with a thinning comb-over and thick, horn-rimmed glasses. He wore his usual gray suit over a red shirt and his signature pair of cowboy boots. Principal Rodriguez always wore the same pair of leather cowboy boots, rain or shine, summer or winter. Maddy had never seen him without them. She knew firsthand that his office was full of cowboy memorabilia. Sometimes she wondered if he fancied himself something like a small-town sheriff. He definitely played that role at school. All he was missing was the star-shaped badge. She and Principal Rodriguez had a tumultuous relationship. Last year, she had visited his office almost once a week for all sorts of infractions, getting in fights, talking back to teachers and ditching class. He suspended her 3 times. The 3rd time, he lost his shit and threw her file across his small office. He yelled words like criminal and correctional facility. She hadn't trusted him since. To be fair, she was doing much better this semester. Probably because her dad was gone more often. Julia gave Maddy an upbeat smile.
Come see me if you need anything, all right? I'll be right up front.
With a kindly little wave that oozed sympathy, Julia left the break room, her heels clicking on the linoleum.
Please, Madeline. Have a seat.
Principal Rodriguez pulled out a chair at one of the metal tables. Maddy sat down. She felt even more nervous now, trapped, sitting, staring up at the police officers and the principal. The first officer, short with a blonde buzz cut, started.
We've been trying to get a hold of your father. Do you know where he is? It's concerning that we haven't been able to contact him.
Maddy raised an eyebrow. Principal Rodriguez knew very well that her father was an alcoholic and hardly ever around. Rodriguez had been trying to get hold of him for years. The one time her father had returned his call, at Maddy's begging no less, it ended in quite a few obscenities, on her father's part, screamed into the phone. When she didn't respond, Principal Rodriguez asked,
Were you aware that your house was broken into last night?
Maddy tried to arrange her thoughts. Was there any point in lying? Gareth was right. She hadn't done anything wrong. Yeah, I was aware, Maddy admitted.
Why didn't you call the police?
The officer's name tag read Marcus Malone. His partner took out a notebook and a pencil. Am I being arrested? Maddy blurted out. Marcus spoke in a calm voice, very cop-like.
No, ma'am, we're not arresting you. But we have to take down a report. Do you know who broke in?
No, I didn't know them.
Were you at the house?
I was home. I woke up around 2 a.m., she began her story. She explained how she had fled the house through the bathroom window into the woods. Malone spoke again.
A woman driving past heard gunshots. Did you see a gun?
Yeah.
Was it yours?
Oh, no.
And did you go back to the house after the intruders left?
Maddy hesitated. No, I called a family friend to pick me up. I didn't go back to the trailer. Malone's partner jotted that down.
And who is this family friend?
Maddy handed over the yellow square of paper in her pocket. That's his name and number. He said you can call him with any questions. More note-taking.
I'm not sure if you're aware, but there was an animal attack in the woods last night in the vicinity of your house. Did you see any animals out there?
No, but I think I heard a wolf growling. I didn't see one, though.
I see. That fits with the bite marks on the victims. Our working theory is that the men breaking into your house ran into a wolf or wolf pack. Unfortunately, they didn't survive the attack.
Maddy swallowed uncomfortably. She glanced down at her feet. So I didn't imagine the wolf after all, she thought.
If we find anyone else connected to the crime, do you want to press charges?
Huh?
If we find the people responsible, do you want to press charges?
Well, yeah. I mean, they stole stuff, I think.
Sorry this happened to you. You were very brave. We'll write up the report. Here is my card. Once you have an itinerary of stolen goods, please send it to me. We will try to recover what we can. If your insurance has any questions, they can contact me.
He handed a slip of paper to her. Insurance? Maddy asked.
House insurance. For the damage.
Oh, Maddy had never dealt with house insurance before. She didn't even know if she had it. Marcus's partner flipped the notebook closed and pocketed it. Both officers looked ready to leave. Is that it? She asked.
Yup. Unless there's anything you would like to add.
No, there isn't. She left out the drugs and the near rape. If the men who attacked her were already dead, there didn't seem much point in reporting it. Plus, it made her uncomfortable to talk about. Wait. What should I do now? I mean, what if they come back?
If you don't feel safe, I suggest staying with friends or family for a few days. Try installing a home security system.
Maddy felt confused. In the past, she had been terrified of cops. Her mother and father had both warned her about social services. She didn't want to end up in foster care. But she was 19 now. Duh. She had forgotten that part. She was an adult and she was on her own. What about witness protection, or something? Marcus and his partner exchanged an amused glance, like her question was funny somehow.
That's for more serious stuff like murder. But hey, if anything comes up, call me. We are here to help you. Have a nice day, miss.
He shook her hand professionally. Then he turned and walked away. Maddy watched the two police officers leave. Then she looked at Principal Rodriguez. He was checking his smartphone.
Would you like to speak to a counselor?
No, it's fine.
Then you should go to class. Julia will write up a note for you. No more tardies, Madeline. Only 2 semesters to go. We want to graduate you.
I know. Thanks.
Thank you.
Rodriguez replied automatically as he turned and left the break room. Maddy followed him back down the hallway into the main office. Julia wasn't at the front counter, so Maddy walked through the lobby and out onto the quad. She felt numb. If anything, her day was now even more surreal. The cops had taken their report, she wasn't in trouble, and now she was going to class. Last night's events had been earth-shattering, yet for the rest of the world, life moved on. She was at school without a backpack. The strangeness left her reeling. Black River High School had been remodeled 4 years ago. The central quad was brand new, with metal benches, sapling oak trees and fresh green grass. The buildings stood in a ring around the courtyard. To her left was the new science hall. To her right, the auditorium and band room. She went to her earth science class in the new science hall, where everything was metal beams and glass windows. She slipped through the door at the back of the lab, halfway through the period. She took a seat at one of the lab stations and didn't do much, since she had missed the handout and the team assignments. The teacher dropped in briefly to check on her, and directed her to the assigned reading.
The best you can do with your time right now is study for the test. Makeup labs are this Friday at lunch.
Mrs. Fleury's cherry red lipstick clashed with her complexion. She gave Madeline a sympathetic glance and a makeup sheet. Then Mrs. Fleury went to help the kids who were actually doing their work. Maddy pretended to read in the textbook, but it was hard to focus. Her head was sore, and she felt guilty. Why was she always missing schoolwork? She knew her teachers cared, but they simply didn't have the energy to keep her out of trouble. That was her life, constantly digging herself out of trouble. Constantly solving the problems her father dumped on her. She couldn't wait to graduate with a C average. She wasn't dumb. She just wasn't great at juggling everything. She didn't want to think about her homework. Her mind turned to Gareth instead, and she touched her lips subconsciously. He kissed her in the car. It came out of nowhere. She didn't know what they were doing. She had met him 5 years ago on the mountain. He had remained a mysterious figure, more of a fantasy she escaped into when she couldn't handle real life. But he lived at 1110 South Bickford Avenue and drove a Camaro. She barely knew him. He hadn't mentioned their history at all, and yet he kissed her. Passionately. As though it was his right. Boyfriend, he said. Was he serious? She knew people had flings. Was this a fling? Was he flinging her? The bell rang, interrupting her thoughts. With a sigh, Maddy closed the earth science textbook and funneled into the hallway with the rest of the sheep. She stopped by her locker to get her math book. It was lunchtime, but maybe if she went to the library, she could cram a few things into her head before her test.